We're gonna get so real in this video. Okay, a number of weeks ago, I put out a video sharing some things that I learned in music school that I felt were very unforgettable and invaluable. This video is a continuation of that topic, except I'm gonna look at the other side of things and explore some things that I wish I was taught in music school. Please keep in mind that these are my personal opinions based on my personal experiences at different conservatories. I studied piano performance in the classical music field, so please do not use this as a basis to form an opinion about music school as a whole. Number one, as a student, I would have loved to have been given a little more context in terms of how classical music exists and plugs into the larger scope of things. So not just as an insular bubble where we're studying all of these great composers and all of this repertoire, but how it relates to other types of music out there, both in history and in current times. One example of this is that I wish I would have learned more about folk tradition and folk music that classical composers drew inspiration from. Why not study the source directly and spend more time on it than just reading a paragraph on it, really investigating the aspects and the nuances surrounding the culture and how they danced and how they sung, all of this. Then turning around to these compositions, so many aspects of the music, including ornamentation, timing, phrasing, dynamics, the general feel of the music is much easier to grasp than it is to just focus on famous interpretations of this piece, studying recordings and then basing your interpretation off of that, because that process is removed from the source itself. Also, regarding music that's being written today, contemporary music as a whole is sort of secondary in a lot of courses and a lot of programs. It's sort of looked at as, okay, now we're going to look at music that's post 1970 or something like that. Whereas I think this should take up a larger portion of music education because this is directly a part of our current culture and it's what's making history. Number two, how to actually make a living. In music school, they sort of train you with an assumption that maybe out of school, a manager and a booking agent will be waiting for you and they'll take care of all of that. But that's not the case. You're gonna have to take care of it on your own unless you're that 0.5%. I think a great place to start even is to have been given a list, a simple breakdown of, okay, here are the different options, potential job opportunities that you can have. So for a pianist, maybe this includes being a church pianist or a rehearsal pianist for an opera company, ballet company, maybe a vocal studio, a teaching studio privately at an academy, grants, that is a huge source of funding for your projects, different types of session work, collaborative work, auditions for management companies and plugging into different concert series, setting up your own concerts, house concerts. So then once you know the options, how do you actually get the job and get paid? I actually still don't really know. I think it's just about putting your name out there and putting your work out there so that people know you exist and that you're hireable, and then maintaining a professional relationship that is reasonable and cooperative, all of that, and being good with emails and contracts, very important, super important. Yeah. I still struggle with this all the time. It is not very easy to talk about money, especially as a musician, because you just kind of want to focus on the project at hand and the music and not have to worry about the admin stuff. I wish that in music school, we would have had a comprehensive course on this that really covers all of the bases. Number three, how to manage yourself, how to self-manage your career and your own affairs, especially tied to your energy and how you work as a musician day to day. Procrastination.
Master.
Table management.
Sort of.
Whatever. Make sure you drink water. What I've gathered over the years is that you really have to separate your managing side from your musician side, as if you are two separate people. So a big thing for musicians is social media. It comes with the territory. It's almost baked into the job description of being a musician these days. And unless you are so good, none of it matters. For most of us, it really does matter, and it takes a specific skill set to manage all of that. It's almost like running your own little media company, and that gets very taxing and very draining very quickly if you don't manage it very carefully, because you are really focusing on music making, which uses one part of your brain and your energy, and then you're having to merge it with this content making and putting yourself out there and making videos, posts, all of that. There's a lot of friction friction between these two things. So just managing it as if you are two separate beings, entities, and you're just negotiating your time between the two is very helpful. And I wish that some of this would have been covered in school. Before we move on, here's some quick tips on the subject. First of all, learn as you go. Don't try to be perfect from the very beginning. Don't be so self-conscious. No one cares. Learn video editing. That is very important. Learn how to record yourself. I'm talking about audio. Try to be unique or useful when thinking about concepts. Choose a rhythm and format that is sustainable for you. And look around. See what's working for others and take notes. Number 4. How to actually teach music. Now, this may seem a little confusing because I'm talking about things I wish I learned in music school where I'm being taught music. But the reality is most musicians at some point will be teaching music. So why aren't we learning about aspects of pedagogy and different ways of structuring our lessons and how to communicate our ideas? Maybe you need to teach an audience. How are you going to present this material so that it's succinct, it's easy to understand, and you're projecting enough so that people on the receiving end are not clued out or confused as to what you're talking about. Just because you are a wonderful and amazing musician, it doesn't mean that you're going to be a great teacher. Number 5, improvisation. So I've shared my thoughts and my experiences with improvisation before on this channel. I think it is a very important skill for any musician to have, whether or not it's a big part of your main practice. And I just wish that there was some space, some course, some area where we're encouraged to improvise and learn about aspects of form and how to formulate ideas and develop them in real time, and different types of improvisation, different types of music that incorporate improvisation. Just more about that would have been nice and helpful, and I think it would help a lot of classical musicians not develop this fear and a sense of hesitation when it comes to improvisation. Number 6, how to practice. Don't get me wrong, I had great teachers that did show me how to practice, and this was all very helpful, but I still think that just the nature of how everything is structured in music school, there's so little time dedicated to taking a look at how you're spending your hours and hours of practice time. So I just think that maybe somewhere it should be a requirement to just cover the basics of how to structure your practicing, how to make it more creatively engaging. That's a big passion of mine if you scroll through my videos on this channel. But just ways to manage those hours and not just figure it out so that you get the result. And number 7, I was considering leaving it out, but it's so important in my opinion that it's worth mentioning. And that is how to pivot away from music if you choose to do so. The reality is that so many musicians ultimately decide that music isn't for them. And there are so many ways of pivoting too. It could be within the music industry. Maybe you study music performance, but then you decide maybe I'm more suitable for an administrative position or something in music management, or maybe you pivot completely to a different field. But when you are doing this, I find that there are maybe a lack of resources in general, a lack of support for students to make these types of decisions and just navigate that whole confusing transitional period. I went through some of that. Obviously, I didn't leave music, but I almost did. And when I was doing that, a lot of people turned their back on me and gave me a cold shoulder, basically, and said, okay, figure it out on your own. Fair enough, but still, I just find that this is quite common. A lot of musicians just go through music school and they just decide this isn't really what they're cut out for, or what they want. And I think that there should be just more robust support in this manner. It's so common. Why isn't this being more addressed? Even one seminar of, okay, if you choose to do this, here are some people to contact or some things to try, just something, you know? Anyway. Not to end on a downer, but this was not necessarily a very positive video. But still, I am very positive about music school. If you don't believe me, watch the video that I made where I'm covering the things that I learned in music school that are so important to me and invaluable. Please give a like on this video if you enjoyed it, and thank you so much for watching.